Okay, welcome to the Harmon Solar podcast. I'm Ralph Romano, Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Harmon Solar. And with me today, I have a special guest, Ben Waschlager, who is a project manager over at Harmon Solar. Ben,
Thank you for having me, Ralph. How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's good to see you.
It is.
I barely ever see you anymore, which
Once a week.
take it for what it's worth.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to start with is I just want to kind of talk about what you do for Harmon, how long you've been with Harmon, kind of give people a background. I know a lot of people probably talked to you before, so let's go with that.
Yeah. So I've been with Harmon for about 7-8 years, somewhere around there. Started out as a door knocker.
That's right, you did,
Yeah,
right?
one of those annoying guys who knock on your door trying to get you to, sign up for solar.
Wow.
Then I transitioned to inside sales and setting appointments. Then did some inside sales and outside sales. Then started doing design works for our third party dealers. And still continue doing all the stuff that I was doing before. I help out the service department with issues that customers that come up with that they can't solve. That usually goes to me to figure that out. And then just recently, I moved to project management for residential and even more recent commercial project management.
So you're like all over the place.
Everything but own the company, I guess.
I'm sure Dan will love to hear that. So, and if you've been to any of the home shows that Maricopa County has, the Maricopa home shows, the last one, which was at State Farm Stadium, I guess it's still State Farm Stadium. Ben was actually up on a panel with 2 other solar companies, and we've put a lot of that video up on our social media. So we made Ben famous. So we thought we'd take from that and we'd take him to the next level and bring him onto our Harmon Solar podcast so that you could actually talk to our customers.
Yeah.
And really today, what we really want to do is we want to get into a topic that has brought some pain to people because it's confusing. It's not the easiest thing for people to work with. It's and no defense to the utility, but we're going to talk about SRP. And SRP is just a very unique.
You have to have a master's degree from MIT to figure it out. That's really what it comes down to.
Right. But it's very specific. It's very particular. It requires people to be involved in their solar, in a sense. I mean, in their solar experience once they have solar. And we kind of want to go through and talk about that. And Ben does talk to our customers, and he's the one that he helps customers through the issues with the questions that they have once they've been solar for a while, and they're like, hey, and we'll get into what the most common complaints are down the road. But Ben's the guy you talk to. So what better thing than to just bring him onto this podcast and kind of have the conversation about SRP?
Yeah.
So I would start with, and I'm sure some people would say, hey, I'm an APS or I'm an SRP, and I have friends of mine in APS, and they have solar, and they've got this 10K system, and it works great for them. Why won't it work great for me? So what's the big difference between APS and SRP?
Yeah, the differences are night and day. It's not cookie cutter. You do see a lot of advertisements on social media, TV, and get solar and you'll never pay a bill, things like that.
Right.
Not how it works in SRP. The whole goal of going solar with any utility is you're looking to pay less for electricity.
Sure. Yeah.
If I used X amount before solar and I continue to use X amount, hopefully that amount that I pay is less.
Right.
That's the goal.
Right.
There's different aspects of it in APS and SRP that you have to understand. How does that translate to paying less for using power? So APS is extremely easy because you just, you use X amount of power. So you need a system that generates X amount of power. And usually the cost of that system is less than the cost of without it. So that's where your savings comes from. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy to do. SRP, it's a little different because they bill you differently. It's not about I used X amount of power and I need to offset that power. It's more of I used X amount of power and I paid for this power at these times and at these rates. And so when I get solar, now I'm going to be shifted to a new rate plan and be paid for or charged for these rates at these times. How does that make it work? Where does savings come from in that aspect? So
that sounds really confusing.
It is, yeah.
And it is confusing. It took us. I know when SRP changed the way they do things, I think it was back in 2017.
Yeah, I remember I was part of that. We took 6 months off of solar or something around that.
Right. So Ben, just for everybody, Ben and I have been with Harmon for a long time. I'm working on my 11th year at Harmon, and you're in year 8, right? And you're going to find that at Harmon. Most of us at Harmon have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I know on the sales side, I mean, most of my team is, probably from 7 years and up. I mean, we've been there. We've gone through the solar coasters and all the changes, and there's been a lot of changes in Arizona. And well, it's called
I like that.
coaster. And SRP is just there. It's typical. What the changes that they made were drastic, and it actually shut down the solar market in SRP for probably 6 months to a year because people had to step back and figure it out, us included, and we had to sit back and figure out how we're going to make this work.
Yeah.
And so I think we did a good job of that. But the problem is Arizona is such a great market for solar. Obviously, we have so much sunshine all year. We use a ton of power in the summer. We're very specific and unique about how we use our energy here compared to the rest of the country. So that being said, a lot of companies do come into this market and they try to sell solar, and then they tackle SRP. And when they don't have the background in SRP and they don't understand SRP, not good for the customer. Right. So we consider ourselves the consultative solar company, and we're out here trying to educate people on what things you need to look for, what you need to do, and why you would or wouldn't go solar.
Yeah.
So we're one of the few companies I believe out there that tell people, no, you should not go solar because your situation is not conducive for savings.
Yeah.
And some people don't like to hear that, and they go somewhere else and they get it and they're like, oops.
Yeah.
Right? We get those phone calls.
Yeah. I always tell people that I'm in the I told you so industry.
Right. That's perfect.
Yeah. So,
right?
When they say, oh, I'm going to do it anyways, I'm like, okay.
So
come back in a year. No,
with our experience, and the cool thing, Harmon's been around since 1975. So we've been there, done that. Started as a commercial electrical company. Been in solar since 2008. We've been through it. We get it. So that's why we really want to talk about SRP and just try to educate you, so that when someone does come knocking on your door, you know what to look for, what questions to ask, et cetera. And hopefully you come talk to Harmon, because I think we do the right thing for people. So as Ben said, SRP, APS, really different. Right. So we'll get into some of the details about that and what that really means. Let's start at point A, right? Sales rep. What should your sales rep be asking you or looking for from the start?
Sure.
Yeah. So what should they do?
So it's very different, as we mentioned many times with SRP. In APS, it's more of a, hey, this is what you use. This is what, we recommend to get. SRP is kind of the opposite. SRP, when you have a sales rep, they actually shouldn't be presenting you a proposal first. They need to get more information from you first.
Yeah, good point.
They need to understand, how do you use electricity? What rate plan were you on before? Do you know the rate plans that you're going to be going on with solar, things like that? APS, I don't think they have like a standard rate plan anymore.
That's changed.
They're all on peak and off peak. SRP, they still have what's called like the basic plan, where you could be on a plan, doesn't matter when you use power, it's still the same rate. And so people who are looking to get solar, you get off of that rate plan, and now you're on an on and off peak rate plan. So now you have to pay attention to when you're using power. So sometimes that's kind of a lifestyle change. So as a sales rep going into a home, you got to ask, okay, well, what rate plan were you on before? If you're on that plan where you don't care when to use power, I got news for you. Once you get solar, now you have to pay attention to it. You got to pay attention to the on-peak times and off-peak times, shift how you're using power, things like that.
Right.
Usage is another big thing, because in APS, it really doesn't matter how much you use. You can put panels on there, and it's probably going to show you good savings. SRP, not so much. If you don't use a whole lot of power, it really doesn't make sense to get solar. The more you use, though, the more it makes financial sense. Typically, there's kind of a sweet spot. It's going to vary on, a lot of different factors as far as how you use power with the on and off peak times. Anywhere between like 16,000 kilowatt hours and more,
right,
is going to make sense. Obviously, the more you're using, the better, simply because you can shift that power to more off peak times, and that's where your savings will really come.
Yeah, I mean, in SRP, my gosh, using the one rate. So they have a few rates, and we'll get into the details of that. But if you use a lot of power in SRP, solar can be an amazing proposition for you. You can save so much money.
It can be better than APS at times.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But you have to use a lot of power.
Yeah.
So, going back to the sales reps and what they're doing, I mean, the first thing they should be coming in and asking you those kind of questions. Why are you looking to go solar? What's your expectations of going solar? Those are important questions. Those are important questions in APS and SRP, but really in SRP, because they have to decide what's going to fit for you. What kind of usage do you have? That's really important. Your roof orientation. I mean, Do you have north roof? I mean, that's not going to work. That's not. We need south,
West.
and we need west.
West is better actually, which is another weird thing
Yeah,
because a
it's
lot
true.
of times people think south. South. I have a great south-facing roof
Right.
in SRP because of how the rates are structured. On peak times are extremely expensive. I'm sure we'll get into demand and all that stuff too. But on peak is just very expensive, whereas off peak is cheap. So then you have to ask yourself, well, what's happening during on peak? On peak is between 2 and 8 p.m. So what's the sun doing between 2 and 8 p.m.? It's setting in the west. So then you gotta understand that as the sun is setting, that you're an on peak time. So it's better to actually have that a west facing system,
which is against what you would consider an AP. An APS would be like, give me south.
Yep.
Because that's going to give me the best production and that's going to give me the most savings.
Yeah.
Period.
Because everyone in APS and other utility companies, they're always looking for highest offset.
Right.
And you get a highest offset south facing because when your panels face south, they produce more. SRP, it's really not about offset, which I know is mind blowing for some people. It's not about offset. It's about when you're using power, how you're using power. So as the sun is setting in the west, yes, your offset will be lower, but you're shaving more of that on peak demand, which we'll talk about as well during that time.
Right. So what I've got on the screen here now is so we're gonna talk about the rates. The two most common rates in SRP are going to be your E27 rate and your E13 rates. Those are the two rates that most people gravitate towards based on their situation. So, and again, your usage, your situation drives what rate you should go on. Also, whether you're going to do cash or finance, things like that. I mean, it all play into what we're talking about. So let's kind of explain the E27 rate first of all.
Sure.
You want to do it or
no? You can start.
I mean, I'll start with it. So obviously, on any rate, you're going to have your monthly fees, right? So you can see the monthly service fees depending on the size of your service section. If it's a 200 amp or under, it's about $32.44 a month. Anything over 200 amp, it's going to be $45.44 a month.
Yeah, and that's an important aspect because I know a lot of sales companies out there will say like, oh, get solar on SRP and you won't have a bill. Well, right there it says you'll have at least a $32.44 fee just for having connection to SRP.
Right. That's just because you're connected.
Yeah,
that's getting billed every month.
$32.
So to put that in the old noggin, that's happening every month.
Yeah, and that's another reason why we say the higher the usage, the better, because there are homes, that don't use a whole lot of power. Maybe they're snowbirds or smaller homes with no pool or anything like that, where they're only using 10,000 kilowatt hours or less. And sometimes their winter bill, when they're not even home or using power, is less than $32 to begin with.
Right.
So when you get solar, now you're stuck with at least $32 to begin with. So
think about that.
That's why we look for homes that use a lot of power for going solar.
So to that, let's go with the second thing. So there's three sections to the E27 rate. You have your monthly service charge, you have your demand charge, and this is the big one. I'm going to come back to this one because this is going to deserve a little bit more time.
Yeah.
And we're going to go to the kilowatt hour rate. So as we keep saying, you really want to use a lot of power. You want to buy power from SRP because if you take a look at these rates, I mean, so that they break it into three times: summer peak, and winter. Summer is May through June and September through October. And you're talking 5 cents on peak and 4 cents off peak.
Yeah. Most people don't even know if that's a good deal or not.
That's a great deal.
Right. Because what are they paying now, right? Before solar, they're paying anywhere between 11 and 13, maybe 14 cents.
Right.
So if you look at that, if you're paying 13 cents per kilowatt hour, and now you're dropping down to about 4 or 5 cents per kilowatt hour, that's a huge savings.
Yeah, it's huge. That's a big deal. And then they have a summer peak, which is July and August. So obviously the two hottest months of the year. And it's 6.9 cents on peak and 4.8 cent off peak. Still really good deal, right? Not bad.
Yeah.
And then November through April, they have their winter rates. And that's 5.4 cents on, 4.6 cents off.
Yeah. So I know this is kind of counterproductive when you think of solar. I always tell people you want to buy power from SRP.
Yep.
Because the idea is to pay less for electricity.
And people don't get that. It confuses them.
Yeah.
Because we always tell them, no, you want a smaller system to help with the demand and you want to buy as much power as possible.
Exactly.
And people are like, no, I want to put a 15K system because that's what the other sales guy told me. He's going to put this huge system on the roof.
Yep.
that's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
You're going to pay more than you're paying today.
Right. Because solar is not free. I know.
Right.
I know. It's not free. You have to pay for a solar. So you have to look at, would I rather pay 9 cents for solar or
Right.
5 cents for SRP? Well, I'd rather pay 5 cents for SRP. Okay. Well, how do I do that now?
Right.
That's the goal.
Exactly. So, and then the final one that we skipped over is demand. I mean, and this is the big, you have the carrot and the stick, right?
Yeah.
This is the big piece right here. So
this makes up the majority of the bill.
It does. This is where your bill comes from besides your monthly service charge. I mean, and if you look at it, it's I'll try to see if I can explain how demand works. I'll let Ben kind of explain it as well. But they have the three times during the year as well. And I'm just going to go to the highest one, summer peak, which is July and August.
Mm-hmm.
You're paying, for the first 3 kilowatts, you're paying $9.50. Yeah. For the next 7,
well, let's back up.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's
go ahead.
3 kilowatts? A lot of people probably have no idea. Like, what is 3 kilowatts? Sure. What does that equate to? Most homes, like when you turn on your AC, boom, you're at like 6. So 3 kilowatts is nothing. Everyone's going to get 3.
Right.
As soon as you turn on your AC, if you have multiple ACs, you're probably already at 6 or 7. Your water heater kicks on, your dryer kicks on, oven kicks on, things like that. Boom, your demand, your kilowatts are going to spike. So 3, you could probably just ignore that. Your first 3, you're going to get that. So you're already stuck with a $32 bill from SRP. You have at least $9 for the first 3 kilowatt hours. So you're at least $41 for your demand.
Right.
That's just minimum to begin with. So go ahead.
No, that's good. And then it just goes up from there.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea. So to your point, and probably in the summer, the average home is going to probably hit a 9 or 10 demand.
Yeah.
On average, And just to give you an idea, with a 9 demand in summer peak, they're going to tag about $133.35 onto your bill just for a demand charge, on top of your $32 monthly service charge, on top of whatever kilowatt hour rate you're using. So you kind of get the idea. It continues to grow and grow and grow. And let's understand with demand, how it works is SRP looks at your demand from your home every 30 minutes. And within that 30-minute cycle,
during on-peak times,
which are 2 to 8, and what they're doing is within those 30-minute cycles from 2 to 8, they're looking for the highest demand that you hit. And that highest demand is what gets charged on your bill. So if you have a party and you have a summer party and you've got the AC going and the sliding doors open and boom, you hit a 12 demand. Well, just for like 5 minutes. That's the charge you're going to get on your bill. That's a $218 charge.
Yeah. They look at the entire month and they go, which time and day was the highest? Oh, it was this time, this day. That's what we're getting you with.
So you have to be able to understand that.
Yeah.
And you have to manage that. Now, if you were just going to try to manage that on your own, wow, that's tough.
Yeah.
Right. That's really tough. And this is where the demand, oh my gosh.
Demand manager.
Yes, I forgot. This is where a demand manager comes in. And this is why it's so critical on a demand rate. You have to have a demand manager that's going to help you manage this. Because if you try to do it on your own, it's just not going to happen. And I'll let Ben explain what's a demand manager.
Yeah, well, to kind of piggyback on what demand is, I don't know, a lot of people don't really quite understand demand. I like to use a lot of analogies. So demand is like this. If I'm driving in my car and I start at point A and I have point B 100 miles away, I could be driving 20 miles an hour the entire time, and I'll still get from point A to point B. It might take me a while to get there, driving 20 miles an hour, but I'll still get there. Demand is like if you're in your car and you floor it. You're still going from point A to point B, which is 100 miles, but now I'm flooring it. So I'm using more gas. My speedometer goes up. Yes, I'm getting there, but my demand now just spiked. I got there faster, so it's going to cost me more because I'm using more gas. So what we like to tell people who are on this plan with demand is, since electricity is so cheap during off-peak times, shift everything. Go, do everything during off-peak times, because, you can do your laundry, run your AC, all that stuff during off-peak, because there is no demand charge and the rate is really cheap. But once we get to the on-peak times, your car should be going slower. Don't floor it. Don't try to run everything all at once, because that's when your demand is going to spike up and it's going to cost you more. So what a demand manager does is kind of like, going back to my car analogy, it's kind of like a governor on your car.
Oh, good analogy. Okay.
So, when your speedometer on your car might say 200 miles an hour, but I guarantee if you floor it, it'll never get to 200 miles an hour, because your governor is going to kick on about, what is it, like 115 or something like that?
Yeah, depending.
Yeah, depending on the car and all that. So That's what your demand manager is. It's like a governor for your house. So if you try to run your AC and your dryer and you do all these things at once, whatever you have your demand manager set at, so if you have it at a 10, it'll make sure your house never gets to a 10.
Right. And so that's key, right? Is you control that. You have the ability to set it at what you want to set it at. It's up to you. But knowing that if I'm going to set it at a 10, I can expect this demand charge
Right.
on a monthly basis. So you can manage that on a monthly basis for your bill.
Yeah.
Um, it's critical. And we connect it to certain things, right? So we connect it to the air conditioning typically.
Yeah. The
Um,
highest items.
Right. Your highest items. Air conditioning is going to be the one thing that's going to it's going to blow it all. Right.
Yeah.
And so what it'll do is if it starts getting too high and it sees that it's getting to a point where it's going to reach demand, it'll start cycling your AC.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's another big concern. A lot of people think like, oh, my AC is going to cut off. I'm not going to have AC at the middle of summer, the hottest part of the day. No, 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 no. It's just because your demand spiked. So what we need to do is we need to get your demand back down a little bit. So it'll turn off for a few minutes here and there, while other things are running, just to keep your demand low. So once your demand goes back down, then we'll turn back on to kind of keep you, right at that threshold of whatever you set it at.
And if you're somebody that works from home, it might be a really good idea too to help yourself. Maybe you pre-cool the house before 2:00.
Pre-cooling is important.
Bring your house temperature down to a certain level. I don't know. It depends what you like. Maybe you want to bring it to 73 or something, and you
Right.
do that, and then you go through the cycle period from 2 to 8, and your house is going to stay cool. We've had customers that have contacted us and said their house is cooler now
Yeah.
than it was before solar, and they have a demand manager.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of knowing what to do and learning it.
Knowing and how to, yeah.
Right. And that's one of the things that when we install demand manager, we will kind of help educate you on how to use demand manager. And we're going to do a podcast series on that as well. And we're going to kind of show people so you get a feel for what it is.
Yeah.
We'll probably get with our
and guess who was asked to be a part of that team?
Yeah, I don't know. We have to figure out if it's you. No, of course it's going to be you. And we might even get somebody from the manufacturer to come on and help us with that as well. Yeah. So we want to educate you on that. But it's important and you need to understand how to use it. It's critical if you're going to be on this rate.
Yeah.
This rate right here, if you're a high usage person, man, you can save some serious money.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of scare tactics that we showed you, with a $32 bill and then this and the demand, you're already looking at, over $100 in the summertime. A lot of people, listening in right now, like, well, my bill in the summertime is not over 100. Well, guess what? It's not right for you then.
Exactly.
Solar is not good for you. But if you're one of those people like, wow, my summer bill is like $500-$600.
Yeah, this is you.
It might be for you then, because going from $500-$600 in the summer to down to, sub 100s, that's a pretty decent savings.
So would you say then that usage dictates going on to this rate?
Usage, yeah.
And what again are we looking for if somebody's at what would we try maybe start looking this route?
I'm sure we'll get into financing and cash and all that stuff. So I'd say paying cash probably around 16,000 kilowatt hours and up. Financing maybe about 18 to 20,000 kilowatt hours and higher. It's probably like that sweet spot where your savings will be there, but just not fantastic. But if you're, a larger home or you have a pool, electric cars, things like that, and you're using 30,000, 40,000 kilowatt hours, this is fantastic for you.
See, and this is one of the things that Harmon, this is why I love Harmon, right? Harmon's people, Harmon's employees, our solar consultants, we're educated on this stuff. So we can actually sit down with you and show you, hey, this makes sense and this is why it makes sense. We don't want to put on your home what's right for us.
Yeah. And to kind of piggyback on that, but also go off on a tangent, the reason why we know this is because part of what I do at Harmon, we have other sales companies who sell solar and we do the install, or some other sales company and install company did the work and they're out of business and they call us. A lot of times people will call us and say, hey, my bills are high. Why is that? It'll go to me and figure out why that is. So I do look at a lot of data for SRP, a lot. And I can, the data doesn't lie. What SRP is billing you doesn't lie. What your system's producing doesn't lie. So once I have the numbers in front of me, now I know the full story. So there's lots of times where I look at the data and I go, yeah, you shouldn't have got solar. So the company that sold it to you, I'm sorry, you shouldn't have done it. But then there's other times where I look at the data and I'm like, yeah, your savings is fantastic. If you want even more savings, maybe you can shift your usage history or your usage patterns this way to more off peak or doing this, and it'll probably save you a little bit more. So we have that knowledge because, on almost a weekly basis, I'm getting more and more of these customers, and I have a, computer full of data of just analyzing all these numbers and figure out, okay, well, this is actually how it works.
How many calls do you think we get on a weekly basis? It's probably mostly in the summer.
In the summer, yeah,
What-
especially around now. Fun fact: July average temperatures in Phoenix are between 96 and 98. For average, again, that's highs and lows. Take the average for the whole
Right.
month. This last July, our average temperature was 106.
Yeah.
So I've been busy.
and that's a different podcast, but just so people understand, when that happens,
your bill's going to go up.
Your bill's going to go up even with solar.
My bill went up. I'm sure your bill
Mine went up too, and I have solar.
Yeah, everyone's bills go up.
It's going to go up because mass heat will, it'll destroy the amount of kilowatt hours you're actually producing.
Yeah.
And when it's 108 at 10 p.m. at night,
you're running your AC.
Yeah. That's just that's a product of living in the desert, guys.
Yeah.
So we just deal with that, and we just had a crazy summer. So I know a lot of you felt the pain.
So during the summer, I probably get on average about 2 to 3 a week of new customers.
2 to 3
wanting me to analyze it. It's not always people who say that their bills are high. Some of them, I've talked to them before. They understand it. They just kind of want that reassurance. So they'll call and go, hey, Ben, can you do another analysis on my bills? I just want to make sure everything's going the way it should. So probably about 2 to 3 a week in the summertime.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the nice thing about us, right? So at Harmon, we are here to help you walk through this. We don't just install the solar and say, hey, have a nice day.
Yeah.
You're our customer for life. So that 20, 25 years, whatever it is, we're here for you. We have a service department. We're actually educating right now a lot of our service team to help them kind of be like little Bens, little cloned Bens, so that we have more people that can help and answer questions, because it's important. That's what we are. We're a consultative company. We want to be able to help you and educate you. So again, E27, that's really pretty much what it is. I mean, that's the rate.
You got to remember there's 3 billing aspects.
Right.
With APS or other utilities, it's one. It's how much did I use, and what are you charging for? That's it. SRP with E27, it's how much did I use, just like the other utility companies. Okay, then when did I use it with the on-peak demand and then the fixed charges? So 3 aspects of that, all that make up your bill.
What else can we say about demand managers? I mean, obviously, we're going to do a podcast on actual demand managers.
Sure. This goes back to what we were talking about before with the salesperson getting information from you.
Yeah.
Because us as salespeople, we have no idea how you use power. So that's an important question. If you are going to go on E27 and you are going to have a demand manager, when we install it, we have no idea what your demand is going to be. So we could guess, but we don't really want to guess wrong. So we have to get more information from you. Are you home a lot? Are you conscious about on and off peak times? Can you shift your power to, off peak times and try to avoid using on peak? What I like to tell people is, let's start your demand at a really low number, because that's when it's going to be cheaper.
Right.
And let's maybe work your way up to find that sweet spot for you. Because if it's too low, your bill will be very low, but you might be uncomfortable in the home because again, it's keeping your demand low, which means it's probably cutting your AC off a lot more. So
right.
If it's too high, your bill's going to be high, but then you also you don't need it that high. Kind of like, again, your governor in your car. If your governor is set at 200 miles an hour, but you're driving around at 35 miles an hour, well, guess what? Your governor doesn't need to be that high. You can bring it down a little bit.
Right.
So we have to find that sweet spot of what's comfortable for you, and every home and every situation is different. It's not a cookie cutter thing. We can't just go in there and go 6 kilowatts. That's your demand, because we don't know. So what I tell people is, let's start low, because that'll at least keep your bill low. And then if you find out that you're miserable and you don't like how your air temperature is in your home and things keep turning off, okay, well, let's bump it up 1 kilowatt and let's see if that's okay the next day. And then bump it up another kilowatt until you find that spot where you're like, okay, I'm comfortable right now and I think my bill is going to be low. So this is where I want to live at, for the summertime.
So it's a process.
It is a process.
And
it's a learning
again,
process.
like we said in the beginning, you're part of that process.
Yes.
This is not a set it and forget it territory.
Right.
It's just not with this rate.
Yep.
Okay. So that all being said, well, the one thing that we do see in the industry now is a lot of people shying away from E27 because it confuses them.
Yeah. They don't want to deal with it.
Or they don't want a demand manager because they don't understand the benefit of a demand manager. They just think, oh, that thing just is going to shut off my appliances. And I can't deal with that. So you know what? I'm just going to go solar and go the other way that all these other companies are telling me this is the way I should just go anyway. And there's a reason they're telling you that. Well, there's a few reasons they're telling you
Yeah.
that. Number one is this is more complicated and this is not the easiest thing in the world to sell.
Right.
But it has the best benefit by far.
Yeah. And
By far.
psychology tells you if people don't know what to do, what they do nothing.
Yeah.
If you don't know, if
Exactly.
a lot of people don't know what E27 is and how demand managers work and things like that. So what they do, stay away from it. I don't know it.
Right.
Stay away from it. That's not always
That's
the case.
voodoo.
Yeah.
I can't do the voodoo.
Exactly.
Right? See, I'm all about voodoo. No, I'm kidding. So the next thing what they do is that instead of even talking about E27 and talking about demand managers, or the customer says, I don't want any of that demand management. Let's not talk about that stuff. I've heard the horror stories about that.
Yeah.
So we go down the road of what's another rate that SRP has, and that rate is the E13 rate. And this is your time of use rate and your export rate.
Yeah, your typical what you probably see with APS and other utilities.
Yeah, this would be very similar to an APS rate.
Yeah.
I mean,
on peak is expensive, off peak is cheap, and then that's it.
Right. So let's talk about that real quick. So I've got it up on the screen. Same monthly service billing charge. It's the same exact for
my screen's black.
Your screen's black?
Yeah, computer died, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, mine's not.
It's okay. I memorized these rates.
So, you know.
Yeah,
but anyway, so same monthly service charge. We're exactly the same. SRP carries that across, right? So okay, easy enough, right? We know what we're going to pay. That's going to be automatically on our 32. Bill,
yep.
Right? So that's happening. Kilowatt hour rate charges very different than what they have on E27. So in this rate, so I'll give you the example. We'll look at the summer peak rate. So again, July and August summer peak rate on peak, 24.85 cents a kilowatt hour.
That's expensive
compared to 5.8 ish.
Yeah.
So let's look at the difference, people. Right? I mean, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Right. So you're paying 24.8 cents.
And remember, before solar, you're probably paying on average about 12, 13, 14 cents.
Yeah, so double.
Yeah, double that
in summer peak.
So definitely don't use peak.
Regular summer, which is May to June, September to October, you're still at 21.7. Yeah. Still way up there. That's California.
Yeah.
Right. Those are California rates.
Yeah.
And then in the winter, it comes down to 10.4.
Yeah.
Which that's not bad.
It's fine. Yeah.
So 2 to 8, you get on the on peak charge during the summer, man, you're going to pay for it if you're using power.
Yeah.
So in this scenario, it's a little different, right? We don't want to buy as much power from the utility as we can because it's not cheap.
Right.
We need to generate as much power as we can.
Yes.
So we want to offset that 25-cent power with, let's say, 10, 11 cent, 9 cent, whatever deal you get, solar power.
Right. It's a peak shaver system is what we like to call it.
Right. So this is where, yeah, absolutely. Let's put the biggest, we want to put a bigger solar system on your house. We're going to, again, you need to look at your usage. You still need to ask the right questions. None of that ever goes away.
Yeah.
But it's just a different way of looking at it. It's a more traditional way of looking at it.
And you could see from the rates comparing the E13 to E27, savings can be there, but it's not as great.
Right.
So it's more of a lifestyle thing. Do you want to be active in your savings? If you want to be active and you don't mind adjusting your demand and pay attention to on and off peak times, E27 is great. If you're one of those like, I really don't want to do that, sounds like it's more of a headache. I'm that type of person. I just want to have on my roof. Well, then maybe E13 is probably better for you.
Right.
It's not a cookie cutter. It's not, a salesperson, again, shouldn't just come in here and go, this is what you should get.
Here's where it's not as good as APS. So with APS right now, the export rate, what I mean by an export rate is if you overproduce. So if your solar is producing at a rate higher than you're using power in your home, right? So that's not going to happen in the summer typically.
Yeah.
It's going to happen in the lower months, in the winter months, in the fall months, in the spring months at times, depending on the size of your system, you may produce more power than you need. And so what happens to that power? Well, you give it back to the utility. It goes back on the grid and goes to your neighbor, whoever else. But it goes back on the grid and they give you basically, it's called an export rate. They give you a credit on your bill every month for that. SRP right now, APS right now, I know they're going through the rate case and it's going to probably go down 10%. I think it's 8.5 cents right now.
8.9. Yeah.
It's 8.9. So right now, APS gives you back 8.9 cents per kilowatt hour that you push back onto the grid. Well, SRP doesn't do it that way. What they do is they have a set 2.81 cents.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets a little sticky, right?
Yeah.
You want to have enough power to offset that peak time because you don't want to pay that high peak rate, but you don't want to overload yourself because now you're spending, let's say, 9-10 cents to create a solar kilowatt hour.
Right.
And you're only getting 2.81 cents back on it. You're losing 7 cents in that scenario every kilowatt hour you produce. So if you're like, I'm going to put a 20K system in my house, which is big, and I'm going to produce all this power and it's going to help me in the summer, I get that. It's going to help your summer bill.
But solar is
But
not free.
Lord help you in the winter and the fall and the spring, because you're going to be overproducing and losing money every kilowatt hour you produce.
Right. Because you have to understand, you paid for that solar system. And now you have to think about, what's my return on investment? Or, if you're financing it, there's obviously no return on investment because there was no investment.
Right.
But still, it's something you are paying for. You have to look at, what am I getting for what I paid for? So if you're like Ralph said, if you paid 9-10 cents for solar, but you're selling it back for 2.8 cents, well,
I wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't do that. Yeah.
If I buy a baseball card for $100 and some guy offers me $20 for it, I'm not selling it to him.
Exactly.
Why would I do that? That makes no sense.
Yeah. Where in APS, it does make sense to sell back extra power, because they pay you at a higher rate compared to SRP. So
yeah, let's not buy high, sell low.
Right.
Never works financially for most people. I know.
I don't think Warren Buffett got that way.
Yeah. Right. So we're not going to buy high and sell low. So we have to try to find that sweet spot, that peak system that we know is going to help us in the summer with that peak energy, and help us, during the year for the most part with that peak energy. In the summer, it's not going to cover all your peaks, so you're going to have to be a little smarter about what you do in the summer. But in the other parts of the year, it's gonna really be a benefit.
And it does come down again to that conversation with your sales rep, because everyone uses on-peak power. I know we all try to, with shifting energy and not using a whole lot, but you still, at the end of the day, you still probably use it because lights are running, TV's running, AC kicks on every now and then, maybe once or twice.
2 to 8, remember, during the summer, 2 to 8.
So 2 to 8, your AC's running, whether you like it or not.
Most of you are home probably by 5 o'clock, and in today's world, most of you are working from home.
So we got to figure out exactly how much on-peak power you're using. Right. Are you very conservative with your on-peak, or are you just kind of let it work how it wants to work type of person? Just the total kilowatt hours, in my opinion, doesn't really tell the full story, because you could be using 20,000 kilowatt hours. And so a lot of people just think, oh, well, then I, need a system that produces 20,000 kilowatt hours. And SRP, I want to look at, well, of that 20,000 kilowatt hours, how much of that is on peak? Is 2,000 on peak and 18,000 is off peak? Or is 10,000 on peak and 10,000 is off peak? Both scenarios, those equal 20,000 kilowatt hours, but two very different scenarios on when they use power. So if you happen to use a lot more on-peak power, then you might need a little bit of a bigger system to offset that.
And that's a great, I know we're not talking about this, Pop, but I'm going to go into it. That's a great example of two people, same home, use power differently.
Could even have the same usage.
Ben and his family, they work remote. They don't ever go into the office. He has 5 kids at home. They use a lot of power all day long. Me, just me and my wife, we don't have any kids left, let's say. We both work out in the office all day, so we're gone all day. I'm going to use a ton less peak power than Ben's going to use. Right. And my system's going to have to be different because my power usage is different.
Yep.
None of these homes are cookie cutter. These systems are all customized to how you use power.
Yep.
And that is a critical point to understand when you're buying solar. It doesn't matter what your neighbors have and what they're doing. They're not you. You guys are all different in how we use things.
Right.
So it's very important to understand that this isn't a cookie cutter thing, solar. It is a customized thing.
Yeah, probably the most common things that we get on, when people call in or even at the home shows. I have a 2,000 square foot home. What should I get? In SRP, I don't really care what your square footage is. I need to know what you're using, how you're using it, when you're using it, things like that. And the other companies, didn't ask for that. I'm like, well, they're just looking out, they're just trying to make a commission. We're trying to do things the right way.
I never understood that. It's funny. So we get that from people sometimes and they'll say, well, no one else is asking for that.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't that make you start to think,
exactly.
Hey, why are these guys asking for all this information? Maybe they're looking out for your best interest.
Maybe.
You ever think about that?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what we're doing. We want to, the one thing we don't want is to give you a solar system. And then a year from now, you're calling us going, why'd you sell me this?
Yeah. That. And when we tell people no, like how much do I get paid when I say no?
Right.
I don't get paid anything. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So just key to understand that. So that's the big difference is the export rate, the 2.81 cents. And the other thing I don't think we really touched on, we're talking about peak times in the winter months. The peaks are different for SRP. They're actually there's 2 of them.
5 to 9.
Yeah, two per day, 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Yeah,
those are their peaks.
It's very confusing because again, whoever designed the rates at SRP, master's degree at MIT or something, because going back to E27, you do have the on peak demand and things like that. In the wintertime, a lot of people don't realize, oh, I have a hot tub, I have a spa, things like that, and it's cold. I want to jump in the spa late at night. SRP, wintertime, 5 to 9 p.m. That's when you're on peak time. So that spa may or may not, turn on or off depending on your demand spike.
No, and the nice thing about it, though, to give SRP their due, right? The winter rate, I mean, like the off peak is 7.8 cents, and then the on peak it's only 10.4.
It is cheap. That's why we tell people, if you have to use a lot of power, do it some other time. Don't do it on peak.
So they're not hurting you too hard in the winter, but in the summer, talking 25 cents on peak. I mean, that's California rates. That's really up there.
Yep.
So that's E13. I mean, those are kind of your two main options when you go solar and SRP, and they're so driven by all the things we just talked about. And we really didn't get into the whole cash and finance thing, but that really helps to drive this as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know we tell a lot of people no sometimes based on cash or finance. I'll let you get into kind of that scenario and how that works.
Sure. Yeah. So it's very tricky. If you have cash, there's, no interest rate, there's no fees or anything like that. Cash is king. So you could do either one. E27, E13 doesn't matter.
The best possible scenario.
Cash is king in this industry.
Yep.
So you have a return on investment with cash because you have an investment. I do talk to a lot of people, who will finance it, talking about the return on investment, and like, you don't have an investment. You financed it. It was no money down. There was nothing invested. Your savings is immediate. With cash, you want a quick return on investment. That is the goal, right?
Right.
Buy low, sell high, return on investment. You don't want a 20-year return on investment because nobody likes that in solar industry. So another reason why you want to keep your system somewhat small, demand manager, E27, is because you will have a faster return on investment, especially in those summer months when your bills used to be, $500-$600 a month. Now they drop down to, a couple, $100 here or there each month. That's a huge chunk on your system, which was small. So it was a small investment, and your return on investment's pretty quick. Same thing with E13. There is a return on investment, but because the savings isn't that great, because you're going, again, you're not buying power at 4 cents anymore. You're buying power a little bit higher for off-peak times. So your return on investment will be a little bit later, but then that's that caveat of, I don't have to deal with demand anymore. I can just have my system on there, and I still will get a return on investment. It just won't be as quick.
And I think that that perfectly goes back to, what is your expectation of this, right? And that's why we have to ask that question, because if we understand if your expectation is, I need to save a boatload of money.
Yeah.
Well, if you're somebody that fits into the E27 realm, then this would be great for you. But if you're going to fit into the E13 realm and you're financing, probably not what you're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, E13, in our opinion, cash only. You try to finance on E13,
it's tougher.
It's tough. It's very tough because you really only see savings on E13 with financing in the summertime for about 3-4 months.
Right.
Well, then you ask yourself, what about the other 8 months? The other 8 months, you're still paying that solar loan. So that monthly solar loan, you're still paying that, and you're still getting a bill from SRP. Those two numbers added together should be less than what you're paying before. But what I found, again, after running lots and lots of numbers and lots of scenarios, the solar loan plus what you pay to SRP added together, it shows a negative savings for those 8 months.
And if someone's trying to tell you, well, we're just going to put that big system on to cover that summer bill.
Yeah.
Remember, you got that export rate of 2.81 cents.
Yep.
Which is going to hurt you the rest of the year. And it takes away from your savings. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like Ben just said, it's going to help you in the summer.
Sure.
You're going to be feeling really good in the summer. But man, you might get a little pissed off in the winter, in the fall, because now you're losing all that money because you bought high and you're selling low.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to balance that, which is why we look at maybe doing a more of a peak size system.
Yeah.
A little bit smaller. That's just going to help you kind of shave that peak time versus trying to blow out your summer bill with this huge system that yours not going to make a whole lot of sense in the other parts of the year.
Right.
So these are all the different caveats that we're looking at with you and trying to help you understand so that you can make the right decision.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
just again, these are just the key points in SRP. Like we said when we started this, SRP, a little tougher.
Yeah.
to go solar, but it still has a benefit.
I know in sales, especially with APS or just sales in general, the salesperson likes to drive the conversation, and lead you certain ways and things like that. In SRP, it's very customer based.
Yeah.
You have to make the decisions. This is what I want. This is how I need it. This is how I live. Things like that. This is how I'm going to pay for it. So now that I've given you all that information about my lifestyle, my goals, my expectations, what can you give me?
Yeah.
That's how it should be. You are driving the conversation.
I mean, I'm going to kind of make it when I go buy a car, right? When I go look at a car, it's about what I want. It's about what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
It's not what the salesperson wants me to drive.
Yeah.
I can care less what his opinion is. I ignore them.
Right.
It's all about what's going to be good for me, what's going to make me happy. And they always are going to try to sell me a payment. I'm not interested in that. What's the value of the car? I don't want to get down that road. But anyway,
right. But again, like in APS, it's like going to a car dealership with all they have are black F-150s.
Yeah.
Well, I don't care what you want. I don't care what the salesperson wants to sell. All we have are black F-150s.
And that's what you're going to get because it makes sense for me.
Because it makes sense for everyone.
Right.
In APS. SRP, not so much. It's more about what's going to make sense for the customer in this case.
Right. So you got to be stingy here. You got to be kind of, protect yourself and make sure that you understand what your needs really are based on your situation. And if someone's not asking you what your situation is and what your needs are, that's a clear red flag to go to the next guy.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a clear red flag to call Harmon Solar.
It is, yeah.
Because we're going to show you the right way.
But I always tell people, if you don't believe me, get 4 or 5 other quotes from other companies. I bet you they're all going to be a little bit different, and you're going to find out why.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so let's go into. We kind of touched on this a little bit, but so we've gone through the couple rates, and we kind of talked about you're taking the phone calls and you're getting complaints. Two most common complaints that you see from an SRP customer.
Why is my bill high, and why does my AC keep turning off? So let's tackle why is my bill high.
Okay.
I always tell people there are 2 reasons and 2 reasons only why your bill would be higher than expected. 1, your equipment doesn't work. That's an obvious one.
and that does happen.
It does happen. It's an electrical device. Your car breaks down every now and then. Things around your home break down every now and then. No solar company in the entire world is perfect.
Right.
Something's going to happen. Something's going to break down. Panel's going to go out. Inverter's going to go out. It's going to happen. Don't worry, we'll come out and fix it. But
which is why you need to go with a company that you can trust, that has a service department as big as we do, that's going to help take care of these things when they happen. I'm sorry, I had to say that,
okay.
But it's so important.
It's going to happen. So those are, sometimes those are legit conversations. So that's the first thing I look at. I look at, okay, is your equipment working? We have monitoring, with the different monitoring of services that we have. But then also there's monitoring on your utility company. So I cross-reference both of those and I go, okay, what's the system supposed to do? And then I look at what is it actually doing. If it's doing what it's actually doing and matching to what's supposed to doing, okay, so your system's working fine. That goes back to my 2 reasons and 2 reasons only. If your bill's higher than expected and it's not number 1, it's got to be your fault. So we then have to figure out, how are you using power? What's going on in your home, things like that. So in SRP, a lot of the times people, again, they just don't understand the demand. So they go, I was living uncomfortable and I put my demand at 15. Now I'm living comfortable. And then I get this high bill. Like, okay, well, the reason why you got the high bill is because you set your demand pretty high. That, the equipment's working fine. The equipment's doing exactly what you told it to do. You just decided to put your demand up pretty high. So that's why it's higher. Another thing is a lot of people just generally use more power. For example, like we mentioned earlier, it's been the hottest July like ever. So everyone's using power. A lot of times people will call in and they say, nothing's changed in my home. I have my thermostat 78 degrees. Nothing has changed. Like, yes, something has changed. You weren't necessarily in control of it. The weather changed. The weather got hotter. So yes, your home was set at 78, but now your AC has to run more to get it to 78. So that also means that your demand threshold might be hitting quite a few times throughout the day. Whereas last year, maybe it didn't get that high. So that's why your bill is higher.
And contrary to popular belief, when it gets really hot, believe it or not, solar panels don't work as well.
Yeah, that's
and that kind of freaks people out a little bit. What do you mean they don't work as well? They don't produce. They're not as efficient in high heat.
They work off light, not heat.
Right. So, and we sell panels that have a high coefficient and heat that are able to actually produce really well because this is a desert.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, when you get 115, 120 going on, it's just going to get a little bit less efficient, which is going to get a little bit less volume, a little bit less kilowatt hour creation, and it's going to impact your bill. It just happens.
Yeah, and the customers that have had solar with us for years or decades, they can see on their monitoring your highest peak production is about May, early June.
Yep.
After June, you start producing less
Start
and
to
less
drop.
and less. And a lot of people are like, well, it's 120 in July. Why am I producing less? Because solar works off of light, not heat.
Not heat.
So in May and June, lots of sunshine, but it's not that hot yet. Once it starts getting hotter, then your production starts going down a little bit.
And to the monitoring piece, because you did mention monitoring. Now, all the systems that we sell, they come with monitoring.
Mhm.
You can see the production. You monitor the system, not us.
Yeah.
Harmon does not monitor the systems. It's on you to monitor the system. And if you see something going on, and you will see it, you give us a call and we take a look at it. But we're not actively looking at it. Most solar companies are not actively looking at it. That's not how it works. You're given the tools to monitor your system, and it's on you to do that.
Yeah, I always tell people it's just like your car. You buy a car from the dealership. If the little light goes on, check engine light goes on, the dealership doesn't go, hey, guess what? Your check engine light came on. Like, no, you need to contact somebody because your check engine light came on. With our monitoring, you get those email alerts, and you can, I tell a lot of new customers, every week, put on your calendar, every Friday, check your solar system. Even if you don't get an alert, just check your solar system, see if it's producing. Just like driving your car. As soon as you get an alert,
you might want to do something
about it. Yeah.
If you don't, it'll happen.
Yeah. Like,
I know if I'm flying in a plane and there's lights coming on and there's no one checking them, I'm a little concerned.
Yeah, maybe.
So
yeah,
been watching a lot of air disaster stuff lately. Kind of weird how that happens.
Yeah.
So why is my bill so high was the first complaint, most common complaint. What's the other one?
Why is my AC kicking off? Again, it has to do with your demand manager. The highest energy sucking device out of your home is going to be your AC. If you have multiple ACs, then your demand is going to be probably pretty high. So the demand manager is designed to turn your AC off so that your demand does not spike. Again, it's like a governor in your car that you set. Are you setting the governor at 110 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour or 20 miles an hour? It's something that you set.
Right.
So if you don't want your AC cutting off, if you're too uncomfortable, you can increase your demand. But again, there's a drawback to that. If you increase your demand, your bill will go up a little bit. I always tell people that be active in your demand monitoring, because I know lifestyles change. People have house parties, things like that. So they'll call up and go, hey, I'm supposed to have a party on Friday. It's during on peak times. Really don't want my AC cutting off and having everybody sweat. Like, okay, well, on Friday, you can put your demand up just a little bit just for that day and then put it back down, when the party's done. But just know when you do put it back up, SRP doesn't know you're having a party.
Right.
You're still going to get billed for that, but just know that's why you got billed for it.
I say have the party at your friend's house. Don't do it
a weekend. Do it on a weekend.
I would do it at Ben's house. I would not do it here.
Yeah.
Let him deal with the bill.
I will pay the bill.
And I'll just have the AC on and the sliding door open, and we'll just go.
Yeah. I'm going to set the demand down to 3.
So, okay. I mean, that's
advice. That's a common thing.
Yeah.
The AC turning off, it's doing that to help you. So you should be really saying you're welcome, because it's keeping your bill low when it does kick off.
That makes sense. All right. Another thing that I would just bring up is, you're talking to different solar companies and maybe they're promising some things to you, whatever that may be, get it in writing.
Sure.
Always get it in writing, because I can tell you anything you think you want to hear to get you to sign on the dotted line.
Mm-hmm.
Get it in writing.
And there's nothing stopping you from going out and doing more research. Get multiple quotes.
Yeah.
All the graphics that we were showing with the rates and everything, that's all on SRP's website.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not a hidden secret. You can go on there and go, like, is what this guy's saying actually true? You can see it. It's right there for you.
Yeah, this is not super secret, top secret information. It's all public. So go take a look at that stuff. And that kind of goes into, as we're wrapping up, kind of talking about some, when you're talking to a solar company, you're talking to an installer, we kind of gave you some things. Make sure that they're getting information from you. They're finding out what your situation is all about. I mean, that's critical. If they're trying to put the largest possible system that your roof will take, no matter what your scenario is, and they're not even listening to you, you might want to talk to somebody else.
Yeah.
If they're not asking you those upfront questions, again, that we continue to keep talking about throughout this entire podcast, those things are so important, because I can't build you something if I don't know your situation.
Right.
How could I do that? It just makes no sense.
Yep.
Apply that to other things in life, right? That you want, if you want something done. Remember, these are custom systems. If you order something custom, but you don't give any directions on what that means,
Yeah.
guess what? You get the generic of that.
Try building a custom home with no insight.
Yeah. What are you going to get? A shell.
I don't know. Yeah.
You know, it's not going to be anything in it. But you're going to get what everybody else gets, probably. I mean, and that's not what you want. You don't want what everybody else gets in solar.
Right.
That's not what you want.
Right.
And, you know, take a look at the installer. Check out the BBB. Check out the register of contractors. Look at those things. They're important. See out what people's experiences have been with those companies, because, you know, look at Harmon Solar. I mean, we're a A+ rated company. We have no complaints on the ROC. I mean, we pride ourselves in that. So, I mean, we're not going to tell you that every single person is 100% thrilled sometimes, because things change, but we work with them. But I will tell you this, that if we do something that's not correct, we'll fix it.
Yeah.
And that's critical. If you're going to go into business with a contractor, make sure you know who that contractor is, and make sure that they're reliable and that they're going to take care of you, because that's important. This is not a small investment.
Yeah.
It's a big investment. And then, you know, how long have they been in the market? Harmon Solar's been around since 1975, solar since 2008. That's important. We didn't just move here from California because their solar market's gone down to try to see what we can get in the summer.
Yeah.
With people coming into this market that do that, they don't understand SRP.
Yeah.
They're just going to sell you based on what California does or what APS does, because that's more common.
Right. Right.
And that's where you can really get hurt.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of that, SRP wasn't always like that.
Right.
And APS wasn't always like this. Every time in the industry they make a change, we have to make a change. Then they make a change, then we make a change. It's just a constant back and forth. So if you have a company, you know, they're pitching you solar and it doesn't sound great, and they say, oh, you know, we've been in the valley for 5 years selling solar. Like, a lot of things have changed in 5 years, and a lot of things changed before then. So, you know, you might want to go with a company that's been around, that's seen all those changes, and knows how to adapt. You know, like Ralph was saying, we've been here since the 70s, and I don't think we're going anywhere, because we know, you know, if any changes happen down the road, you know, in 5-10 years with any utility company, we know how to handle that change. We've done it before. We can do it again.
The solar coaster is real.
Yeah.
Every 6 months, it seems like something changes.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 11 years, and it just seems like it's a constant change of direction. And if you don't stay ahead of that, man, a lot of companies have come and gone.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of companies come and go.
Right,
They're just in here for a little bit, and then they can't understand how things work, and then leave.
Right. So, in closing, anything you'd like to say in closing? I mean, I think we've gone through a lot of really good stuff here. I know it's a lot.
Yeah.
So listen to this thing like 100 times to really get it. But
write down. Yeah.
Again, if you have questions, you can call Harmon Solar. You can email us. Our solar consultants, they're trained in this stuff. They understand this stuff, and they'll sit down and we'll have a consultation with you. We're not going to come into your home and try to hard sell you. That's not what we're about. We're about education.
Yeah.
So
ask lots and lots and lots of questions.
Yep. You have to ask questions.
Should know.
And I'll post Ben's phone number, home address, and everything up here later.
Wow.
No,
Appreciate that.
Okay. So anyway, that's it. That's our discussion on SRP. We'll be back soon with some other topics that we're going to get into, but I appreciate everyone listening. And Ben, thank you for the education, and
thanks for having me.
And yeah, it was good.
All right.
We'll talk to y'all later. Thank you.